We are one calling on the NFL to give us a meeting. Somebody say, give us a meeting. 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 We're calling on the NFL to give us a meeting, and we'd like to have that meeting by September 7th.
Because if the NFL can sign rapists, domestic violence abusers, animal abusers, then you know what? They can sign a man who stood up for what is right and highlighted the injustices to the underrepresented communities that he comes from.
And so I want to say to the 32 team owners, will one of you have a conscience? Will one of you wake up?
Powerful. That was the scene outside of NFL headquarters in Midtown Manhattan on Wednesday. Hey, welcome to SI Now. It is Thursday, August 24th. I'm Maggie Gray alongside Robin Lundberg. Joining us today is Kayla Rodriguez from our sister publication, Essence Magazine. You were at the protest yesterday. What was the overriding message that the protesters wanted to get across?
The overriding message is that we're going to stand by Colin Kaepernick. It's a big deal, and it's important to stand up against police brutality, social injustices, anything going on in the community. It's important, and it's not enough now to just retweet a hashtag or post a message on social media. It's important to use your voice now more than ever.
You know, I have heard owners say that they were worried about the backlash of signing him. And my counter to that was, you have to start worrying about the inverse of that backlash, because those people were loud, but that doesn't make them the majority of NFL fans, because I think you see a lot of fans going, hey, this isn't right. We know he's better than a lot of the guys who are getting signed, and he didn't do anything wrong. But how do you actually influence the NFL? Are there actionable plans that you saw, like boycotts? Do you expect boycotts to possibly spread?
I think they will spread, and there was a call for more action. Tamika Mallory, who's the co-president of the Women's March, she said it perfectly. She said, you want black players to be there, to be focused on winning, and you're worried about scores, but you don't want to be present when they're being shot in the street. And that's a big deal. And the point there being is that if something happens in your community, it affects us all. You need to be present. You need to be using your voice, because it's all of us.
There were a couple calls to action, and one was a policy protecting players who do take on these social issues. Another was an outside review board to sort of police, quote unquote, the NFL, almost like an ombudsman would for a media publication. The other is to reinvest into these communities that Colin Kaepernick has led the charge. He really has put his money where his mouth is, raising almost $1 million to this point for several different charities. I mean, what were the leaders of the crowd and the protesters sort of hoping to get across with these actionable plans?
There were some amazing speeches. Again, Tamika Mallory, co-president of the Women's March, was there. Carmen Perez, Linda, so many leaders were there. Also, Kappa Alpha Psi, Kaepernick's fraternity, was out there voicing their opinion. And what they're calling for is a policy in place where players like Kaepernick who are taking a knee can have some support, can be protected. They do want another company outside of the NFL to be able to police and look into like any sort of cultural sensitivity issue, anything that may be happening that may be seem fishy, because they can't police themselves, and that was the point.
Now, when you look at what has happened in the NFL, the anthem protests have spread. Obviously, Charlottesville was a big incentive for a lot of guys to say, oh man, you know, something really is wrong here. How many people do you think have started to relate more to Kaepernick's cause, even though that wasn't the direct impetus for why he initially started his protest, but almost retroactively going, yeah, I mean, this guy doesn't deserve to be ostracized the way he is?
I mean, everyone's using their voice now, and it was important. Also, another point made at the rally that it's not just about Colin. It is a little bit bigger because of the climate that we're in today. So it's important to sort of be aware that, yeah, we're standing by Colin Kaepernick, but there's so much else going on, and it is time to use our voice to address all of it.
John Mara is the owner of the New York Giants. He said that he got more emotional mail from fans of the Giants saying that they would be disappointed if the team signed Colin Kaepernick. I'm curious if there were counter-protesters there at all. Was that a big faction of people who are against the protest?
I found that out later. Once I was watching the nightly news, there was a small group across the street, and their point was, well, yes, Colin Kaepernick has a right to protest, and you can protest anything you like, but then it's also business at the end of the day, and NFL has a right not to hire him. So there was a small group across the street that had a counter-protest.
To that point, the people who are protesting for Kaepernick and asking for these actionable items, what is the response if someone were to say, hey, we can't prove that Kaepernick or anyone else isn't on a roster because of a social stance they took, but it could actually be the reason that a team is putting out there?
What they want is a meeting. They want a meeting, they want a dialogue, they want to start a conversation first, because there has to be something else to the story. I mean, this is one of the best players, and he's not signed by anyone, and it just so happened to happen after he took a knee. So there has to be a conversation had about that, because there's something going on.
Yeah. Kayla, really appreciate your perspective.
Thank
you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Part of the reason the Kaepernick story continues to resonate are the struggles of many teams to find adequate play at the quarterback position. The Jaguars announced Chad Henne will start their next preseason game over Blake Bortles. Meanwhile, the Browns hope they might finally have their answer at QB in DeShone Kizer, who is taking over the starting spot for preseason Game 3, making him our adrenaline performer, presented by Toyota. Let's go places. As a result of what they've seen from Kizer, the Browns are reportedly looking to deal Brock Osweiler. Maggie, is there still a market for Osweiler?
I think there is, and as we get closer and closer to the regular season, I think that market ends up growing, because I think teams who do not have an answer at quarterback, cough, cough, the Jacksonville Jaguars, might try to talk themselves into Brock Osweiler. I looked a little bit more closely at his contract, and any team that does pull the trigger on a trade for Osweiler really could get him for just a one-year rental. They can part ways with him after this season, so maybe that makes you feel a little bit better about that big salary number that he got from the Houston Texans before they dumped him to the Cleveland Browns. It's hard to say that a guy who's going into his 6th season may have potential, because you kind of feel like you know what you have by season 6. But I think a team could talk themselves into Brock Osweiler, especially one that's desperate as the clock ticks away.
If there is a market for Brock Osweiler, I have to say that shows there is a dearth of good quarterback play in the NFL at the moment, because this is a guy who played on good teams. The Broncos were good, and he was not good. He was on the Texans. They were good, and he was not good. Which leads me to conclude that he is not good, especially if he couldn't win the Browns QB job. So I do think that is a hesitancy that would come over me if I was looking to trade for Brock Osweiler, especially if I have to give anything to get him.
No, I mean, that tier 3 and 4 in the NFL for quarterbacks is looking very crowded right now. And of course, the Colts may be running out of time as well. Reporters who cover the team estimate that the Colts have about 6 practices remaining after this week. There's still no timetable for Andrew Luck's return. So keep in mind, Luck hasn't been through a full practice in 7 months. But Robin, considering where the Colts are and their lack of expectations, is this a bigger story in reality or for the fantasy football owners out there?
Short term, it's a bigger deal in fantasy because it will affect Andrew Luck's draft status. As far as reality, I do think there is something there, because this is a guy who came in as a bit of a prodigy, right? He was supposed to be the next great quarterback, and he has been great at times. He hasn't exactly been protected by his offensive line. But anyone who misses that amount of time in this sport, when you can risk re-injury and he is still being held out, there has to be a little bit of a concern about his long-term health. And I think that overtakes any sort of minor fantasy draft ramifications, whether Bob from The Office takes Andrew Luck in the 4th round or the 5th round, if there is any concern about the prolonged health of Luck and the length of his NFL career.
I think this is only a fantasy story, because that's the only realm right now where Andrew Luck's health to me makes any difference, because we've acknowledged that Chris Ballard, who's the new general manager for the team, really in his first year starting to rebuild this from scratch, and starting with the defense. Not scratch because you have Andrew Luck, but starting with the defense. Their first 3 draft picks in this year's draft were all defensive players. It's clearly that is the priority. Mix into it, there have been about 10 guys who have suffered some type of injury just throughout training camp on the offensive side of the ball. Outside of Indianapolis, the expectations for this team, I think, are absolutely zero, and I wouldn't risk anything with Andrew Luck in this season. I know the division is bad, so it always seems to give you a chance, but I'm not going full-out tank here, but I'm recalibrating my expectations in the building to be just a very mediocre team and then rebuild for next year. One other thing to keep an eye on, though, with Andrew Luck, I don't know how this affects Chuck Pagano. He was given a 4-year contract extension, but that was by the old general manager, Ryan Griffin. Grigson. Now you have a new GM. I'm not so sure if this season is going to be a litmus test for Pagano or if the team will say, hey, we really didn't have our horses with us. We can't judge him.
He has a built-in excuse that you just mentioned. I still think he's on the hot seat, but you're right. I mean, remember, the Colts were a team that was on the come-up. They were talked about the next team to maybe ascend to elite level, and that talk is gone.
For many parents, watching their kids play sports isn't just reserved for Little League or the JV soccer team. It's become a way of life. Between travel teams and individual coaches and more, youth sports has become a $15 billion a year industry. Sean Gregory is a senior writer for Time. He's written about the youth sports boom. Ben Goldberger is the assistant managing editor. He worked on this piece as well. It is the cover story for Time this week, how kids sports turn pro. First question. Does all this specialization, the individual attention, the coaching, does it actually help the kid?
It depends. There is some evidence that it doesn't. We cite a study that UCLA did a few years ago. They surveyed something like 286 college athletes and figured out that 86% of them played 2 or 3 sports growing up. So, you know, and some coaches, Urban Meyer has been on record saying he looks for kids who play different sports growing up.
But it cuts both ways.
Right.
I mean, there's no doubt that this really, really intense specialization has brought with it unprecedented access to a level of coaching and training that I certainly didn't have, that even elite kids didn't have as recently as 10 years ago, let alone 20 or 30. The question is, at what cost?
Yeah, speaking of that access,
let's talk about the cost. It said $15 billion a year.
Is it accessible to, you know, quote unquote regular people, or what are the financial restrictions?
Sean can speak to this in greater detail, but increasingly less so. And that's one of the most alarming things about the rapid professionalization of youth sports.
Yeah, I mean, quick number. If you're 41% of families that make $100,000 or more participate in youth sports. If you do 25 or less, it's 19%. So it cuts it in half. So there's data out there that shows it's a pay-to-play system.
I mean, how much does it cost a year? If your kid is a really good baseball player, soccer player, and you're paying for individual hitting instructor or something, what is this going to run you?
Really, the sky's the limit. It depends almost entirely on how much you want to put into it. I mean, the kid on the cover of the new issue of Time is Joey Arachi, and he goes by the nickname Joey Baseball. He has more than 24,000 followers on Instagram right now. His father spends north of $30,000 a year on his career. Figure private coaches are at least $100 an hour, and many are doing it not just for one skill, but a range of them. You could have a fielding instructor, a pitching coach, a hitting coach.
I feel like the end game here should be fun, personal development, all of those things. But is there another end game? Is it the college scholarship? Is it going pro?
Yeah, I think the scholarship drives a lot of it. Now, you know, you talk to families, and in fairness, the Joey Baseball, for example, the kid looks like he's having fun. He makes friends. There's great experiences and memories to be had playing youth sports at this level if you don't make it to the pros. But on the flip side, the odds of getting a college scholarship, something like 2% of high school athletes actually play Division I. So the odds are against you. So if you're banking on that, which surveys show a lot more parents are, that's a dangerous proposition.
One of the things I worry about is how much is it the kid who wants to participate and how much is it the parent driving the kid to participate. Are you guys able to get a gauge on that at all?
It's mixed. I mean, you never know. The kid looks happy, but, you know, later on, does he really want to be playing baseball? You hear different things about different kids. But, you know, we've been to some of these, I went to a few of these tournaments, and kids are in the pool splashing around. I mean, it's not a bad experience. As a parent, it's really, really stressful because you have to make decisions. It takes up a lot of your mind space, like, do we go to this, do we go to this, and it could eat at your wallet as well.
Kids absolutely love it, but the higher the stakes, the greater the stress, and the more it increases the risk of burnout. So you wind up with a lot of really talented kids who decide that they've just been pushed too hard, too far, too young.
I'd like to think that if a child was so talented, no matter where they come from, what their family's socioeconomic status is, that, quote unquote, we'd find them, you know, the diamond in the rough. Is it possible for us to find that special kid anymore, or do you have to be going on this path from when you're 6 years old to be part of the national scene.
I mean, there are exceptions. Otto Porter comes to mind from the Washington Wizards. He famously, when he was at Georgetown, the big line, he didn't play AAU basketball. How did he do it? I mean, if you are good and you work hard and you can get around the system and good in high school, you will be found. What's happening is, since there's pressure to play earlier and earlier, if you're not like ranked or discovered by the time you're in 7th grade, you're thinking, I'm not going to get a college scholarship. I'm going to go do something else. So you miss out. A lot of these sports are missing out on really good potential, really good athletes.
Well, and sort of erecting ever higher barriers to kids who may not be elite but would still benefit from playing organized sports. There's all sorts of really important things to be learned and gained from playing sports as a kid, even if you're never going to go on to play in college, let alone the pros. And as we become increasingly competitive and professionalized, more and more of those kids are being left out.
And there's less like local leagues, and the old, Little League becomes an afterthought for kids. And so Little League participation is way down over the last few years.
Because everyone's like on a travel team.
They're on a travel team,
like
but they're not on the travel team. They're not playing baseball.
Yeah, it's unbelievable how things have changed in such a short amount of time. Although I love that in this piece, this young boy who's on the cover, yet the 24,000 Instagram followers, he still believes in Santa Claus. So everyone, let's pump the brakes on him being the next Mike Trout. Let's just let him be a kid. Ben Goldberger and Sean Gregory, thank you guys so much. Great job on this piece.
Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor had their final pre-fight press conference yesterday. And of course, the actual fight is finally this Saturday. So we thought it'd be a good time to take a look at the timeline of how we got to this point.
The Mayweather-McGregor mega fight is finally here. But it's been a long, strange road, starting not with a title defense, not with daring bravado, but with an offhand comment on a late-night talk show.
I would certainly box him if the opportunity arose, most certainly.
That set the wheels in motion, but it was a slow turn. For almost a year, Mayweather-McGregor was mere speculation, until the UK paper The Sun reported that the pair were on the verge of a deal. Both fighters, at least publicly, seemed ready to box. But then, McGregor lost his cool and put the match in jeopardy.
That's all right. Hey, Connor, don't throw those hands. Connor. That's a wrap. Get him out of here.
Still, negotiations continued, with some big numbers being thrown around. For nearly another year, the fighters exchanged figures and verbal jabs. But finally, on June 14th, 2017, the deal was signed. And then came the fireworks.
You punk! This your boss, you little bitch! Why you dealing with a skill bag on stage? You can't even read! Shut the up, your mouth! Shut the your mouth!
So it's on. And McGregor has the edge physically. Not to mention he's 11 years younger. In fact, Floyd himself said Conor has the edge on paper.
He's a bigger man, from top to bottom.
But none of that matters to the Vegas bookies. Mayweather is undefeated. He's arguably the best pound-for-pound fighter of all time. And, he's actually stepped in a boxing ring before. Now, all that's left in the battle of the mouths and fists is the fighting. Game on.
What happens in Vegas won't stay there this weekend as Mayweather and McGregor is approaching. To go over the fight odds, I'm joined now by Westgate Las Vegas Superbook manager Jeff Sherman. Jeff, Floyd Mayweather opened at about minus 2,500, and because of action on McGregor, you have him at minus 550, and I've seen him at minus 475 some places. Is it putting a ton of money on Mayweather a good play at that number?
Yeah, I'm really surprised that the number got as low as it is. When we opened this back in February, when there was speculation that the fight was going to occur, we thought we put up a number that was somewhere between the true odds and the betting market odds, how they would come out. But ever since we put it up, the public has been constantly supporting McGregor, and all the way to the point that it is now, where I'm surprised it's this low. And the one thing we have at the low price, we're still getting a ticket count that is about 92% on the McGregor side, but the larger wagers are coming in on Mayweather at this low price now.
So does that mean that the quote-unquote smart money is going on Mayweather?
Yeah, it's basically, this is a large contrast in the general public versus the sharp action, and the sharps are supporting Mayweather at this low price, and the general public just wants to bet a little to win a lot, so they're supporting McGregor at the plus price.
When you're looking at the total action, how does it compare to a typical boxing or UFC event?
Well, this is going to be our largest handled boxing event we've ever done, which it's going to exceed the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight, which was our previous record. And UFC doesn't come close to this, so for any type of combat sports, this is going to set a record in the state of Nevada.
How would you handicap the odds of the fight going the distance versus being stopped at some point?
Well, we have various propositions up, and you can bet what point the fight will be stopped in. So right now, we have the fight going the distance as no minus 260 and yes plus 210. So it's favored not to go the distance. And our market round prop is 9.5 rounds under minus 180 and over plus 150. So generally, from the price on the side and the round prop, it's expected to be Mayweather somewhere maybe in the 6th or 7th round is the optimal price as far as the market goes.
How big a blow for Vegas would it be if McGregor somehow does win?
It would be a large loss for the industry, the state of Nevada, the books in Las Vegas. This is some of the largest liability that these books have faced, especially on a single event. You might see it on future books once in a while with long odds, but collectively on a single event, it poses some liability. So each book has the ability to shape what position they want to be in by raising or lowering the price the next few days.
Well, Vegas typically doesn't lose on these propositions, so I would imagine the money, appropriately enough, should be on Mayweather. Jeff, appreciate the time.
Thanks for having me on.
And still, UFC lightweight champion of the world, Pat Miletich.
Look, anybody can technically become a professional fighter, but to be a successful professional fighter, to be a world champion, nothing else can matter. I think that a lot of people are scared of fighters. They think they're volatile. They think that they're violent people by nature, and that's not the case. You know, a lot of guys in MMA, a lot of women in MMA are very highly educated, master's degrees, engineers, you know, varied backgrounds. So, you know, we're everyday people who are dreaming for big things in life and pursuing it. That's really what it comes down to.
I'm the boxing guy. Watch me take over boxing. Trust me on that. Not knowing that this boxing game knows what's coming. Trust me on that. When I step in there, I'm going to shock the whole world. Trust me on that. Look me in the eyes. 28 years of age. Confident as a long, rangy. Dangerous with every hand. Trust me. I'm going to stop Floyd. You're all going to fucking eat. You're all going to eat your words. The whole world is going to eat their words.
When you think of all the huge upsets in sports history, I would say this one, if McGregor can pull off this victory and score a knockout, because he's not going to outpoint Mayweather. It's just not going to happen. Nobody's going to outpoint Mayweather. But if he can pull off a knockout and win, it'll be the biggest upset in sports history, bar none. To have the opportunity to fight someone of Mayweather's stature in this sport, a guy that's 49-0, to be a guy that pulled it off, not only in the negotiating room, but to be good enough of a striker to even be considered for a fight like this is incredible. So, you know, both these guys have done an immense amount of work, marketed themselves, have made a lot of money for themselves, for a lot of other people to get to this point. So look, you can call it a money grab, but I would say this, that McGregor is a guy that has a very good chin. Mayweather hasn't legitimately knocked anybody out in 10 years. That means that a guy with a bomb for a left hand, MMA fighter or not, is going to be there for most likely 12 rounds with the ability to potentially land that punch. It's a legendary event. It's absolutely a legendary event. And I think it's, in the end, I mean, this is taking the sport of mixed martial arts backwards to its infancy, its beginning, where, you know, can a karate guy beat a wrestler? Can a boxer beat a kung fu guy? You got a boxer against an MMA guy. This is going backwards in time to me, which is really cool. It's kind of the old world coming back, and you know, hats off to McGregor for stepping in there and doing it, and hats off to Mayweather for coming out of retirement and taking the chance.
Panthers linebacker Thomas Davis is an All-Pro, two-time Pro Bowler, and Walter Payton Man of the Year award winner. He has also developed the Thomas Davis Youth Leadership Academy as part of his Defending Dreams Foundation. Thomas Davis, good enough to join us. We'll get to the good work you're doing with middle school-aged kids in just a moment. But we have to say congratulations on signing an extension with the team. In this day and age where players get traded every offseason, how does it feel to know that you may end your career as it started, a Carolina Panther?
It's a great feeling. I feel like the organization has invested a lot in me, and I feel like I've invested a lot in the organization. And, it definitely feels good to sign that extension knowing that, this is going to be the last contract that I actually sign.
Now, speaking of extensions, it appears Roger Goodell also in line for a new 5-year contract extension. How are you and fellow players feeling about Goodell as the commissioner until the year 2024?
The commissioner has a very tough job to do. He's going to always be criticized by anything that he does. And, for us as players, we just really try to focus in on playing the game and being the best players that we can be, understanding that, he has a job. And, we feel like, to some degree, he's done a good job in some areas, but, when it comes to player discipline, we feel that it could have been a much better job done. But, at the end of the day, he has, like I said, a really tough job, but, hats off to him for his extension.
Let's talk about the Panthers team for a moment. Rookie Christian McCaffrey, he's been making noise this preseason. Jonathan Stewart was quoted saying, quote, "No one in the league will be able to cover him one-on-one." From the defensive perspective, what makes him so special?
The kid is a dynamic kid. He's a guy that can line up in the backfield and you can hand him the ball, or he can get out on the edge against linebackers, against cornerbacks, against safeties, and it's going to be a matchup night. He's a guy that's definitely tough to defend, and I'm just happy that he's on our team.
Less than 2 years ago, Cam, league MVP, 2016, saw him statistically take a major step back, obviously missed some time this offseason due to the shoulder surgery. In your opinion, which Cam will we see in 2017?
Hopefully you'll see the MVP Cam. He's coming off of his injury right now, and, our trainers and our coaches, they're taking him slow right now, but you can see it. He's the same old Cam. He's going to still have that same arm strength, the ability to get out of the pocket with his legs, and, he's going to be a dynamic quarterback for us as usual, I feel.
I know hypotheticals are tough, but if Cam's shoulder maybe isn't fully healed, or if, we'll knock on wood here, he suffers a setback, would Colin Kaepernick be welcome in the Panthers locker room?
For me, as a player, we would definitely love to have a guy like Kaepernick because we know what he has to offer to this game. We know that he's a guy that can come in and he can play right away. He's proven that he can lead his team to the Super Bowl. And, if you look at his numbers, he's had some pretty decent numbers from a quarterback standpoint. Yeah? And at the end of the day, that's what you want. You want to focus in on football. There's a lot that goes on in the outside, and I commend Cap for what he's done in raising the awareness for the social injustice that's going on in this world. So I would definitely welcome him as a teammate.
As someone who commends Cap for what he's doing, we've seen, obviously, these players taking a knee. The anthem protests continue to grow. As a leader in the locker room, how would you feel if one of your Panthers teammates decided to take a knee?
Hats off to him. At the end of the day, you are entitled to your own opinion as a player, as a person, and different things affect different people differently. And I feel like if that's a way that a guy wants to show, the way he feels about what's going on in the world, then hats off to him. I feel like at the same time, too, there are also other ways of doing it. For me, it's I'm actually getting ready to work with the local police agency here in Charlotte, and we're trying to come up with some ways to really bridge the gap between the community and the police officers. So that's one of the things that, I feel like I'm taking a stand for myself and for our community and working on.
That's fantastic, and thank you for sharing that with us. We'll hopefully catch up with you after you've done that so we can see what kind of progress you've made. We'd love to make that happen. I read in the local papers that you said you were, quote-unquote, alarmed at the latest Boston University study on CTE. I know it's a very personal thing, but considering you are a veteran of the group, if someone like Luke Kuechly or Cam Newton came to you and said they had doubts about their future, what would you tell them?
that's a question that's definitely, like I said, it was alarming hearing that stat that we heard. And at the end of the day, for a player, you're supposed to be concerned when you hear stuff like that. And I think for those guys to be concerned, it's a legitimate concern. But at the end of the day, I feel that the league has done a really good job in taking a stance and correcting some of the wrongdoings that were going on early on, by making guys sit out when you have head trauma, by making guys go see neurologists, and really doing all those things. I mean, it's not perfect. The program that we have in place right now is not perfect, but it's a lot better than what it was.
Let's talk about the Thomas Davis Youth Leadership Academy, part of your Defending Dreams Foundation. It's aimed at middle school age children, really preteens. Why did you want to focus on that age group?
Because we feel that's a fine age for kids. You know, kids are really trying to make a decision which, whether they want to be good students or whether they want to be followers of other students in middle school. And we feel like that was the perfect age to catch them at. So we can teach them how to be productive leaders, how to go on and do things the right way. And that was one of the real reasons why we chose middle school age kids to work with.
The Thomas Davis Youth Leadership Academy, a lot of information about it online, including when you can sign up and the deadline to sign up. Thomas Davis, really appreciate your time and weighing in on a variety of subjects today. And good luck in your season opener against the 49ers.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Before we go, we have a very special announcement. Today, SI Play is launching an all-new and upgraded mobile app, which connects the world of youth sports like never before. And for the first time ever, it's available for free to anyone with a smartphone. Now everyone from local rec teams to entire leagues can enjoy SI Play's industry-leading technology. Watch this.
Geez, I wish they had that when I was playing youth sports. We used to just show up at the field when it was raining because you never knew if the game was going to be canceled.
It looks like they got everything covered, almost down to who brings the orange slices.
I know. That's going to do it for us. Of course, thanks for watching SI Now. We'll be back tomorrow to close out the week at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. But until then, stick with SI.com for all the latest news and headlines. And follow us on Twitter. We'll be posting clips from the show right after this.
Those kids could probably beat me.